Fallout is one of the greatest video game franchises ever made, but it actually has a very unique and unknown history. From bankruptcy to heartbreak and unreleased games, this is the entire history of Fallout, I guess. In 1994, Interplay Entertainment acquired Black Isle Studios, and they would begin their work on what was supposed to be a sequel of the successful Wasteland game, and it would become what we know today as Fallout. It was described as a post-apocalyptic role-playing game, and players were able to choose what their abilities and strengths were, making each playthrough unique. This is still the classic formula that the modern Fallouts use. After 3 years of development, Fallout would finally be released in 1997. Fallout 1 takes place in Southern California 84 years after the Great War. Your character is introduced as a vault dweller, which means they lived in a safe underground vault, and there are some dirty blue jumpsuit wearing bitch. However, the company behind the vaults, known as Vault Tech, didn't actually build these vaults for our safety, but rather to run sick and twisted experiments on their residents. But the vault we grow up in is Vault 13, which was one of the select few vaults where there wasn't any crazy experiment being ran. However, the vault's water chip had gone into critical failure, so the Overseer sends you out into the wasteland in order to retrieve a new one. Fallout 1 is a turn-based game, and the wasteland is filled with mutated monsters, factions, towns, characters, and a massive open world. Fallout 1 wasn't a massive game, but it did have its own fan base behind it, and this would lead to its sequel, Fallout 2, being released the following year. Fallout 2 was similar to Fallout 1 in terms of the gameplay and features, but Fallout 2 took the open wasteland to a whole nother level, adding more content, characters, and stories. They would also add a lot more humor to this chaotic world, and you can even become a corn star. But Fallout 2 had actually began development before Fallout 1 had released, and with the mediocre sales of the original game, there was a lot of pressure to deliver Fallout in a huge time crunch with only 1 year for development. This would lead to a lot of crazy Easter eggs that developers had to think of on the spot and just left them in the game. However, this would lay the foundation of Fallout being a serious game, but with humor being a huge part of it. Fallout 2 takes place 80 years after the events of the first game, and the player takes control as the descendant of the Fallout 1 main character, known as the Chosen One. The player is sent out to go and retrieve a massively important device known as the Gek. The main antagonists of the game are what's known as the Enclave, who are what's left of the US government, and they plan to take over the wasteland by force and by showing no mercy in order to restore control in the United States. Fallout 2 didn't have many gameplay changes, but its narrative and lighthearted approach on things led to it being a huge hit, and it was loved by a lot of people. A game known as Fallout Tactics would release 3 years later, where the character takes control of a Brotherhood of Steel initiate. Fallout Tactics is not canon in the Fallout storyline, and there was actually some plans for Fallout Tactics 2, but the poor sales of the first one led to it being scrapped. A few failed spin-offs later, and Interplay Entertainment would eventually go bankrupt, causing Bethesda Game Studios to take control and have the rights of the Fallout franchise. This would lead to the series going in a whole new direction, now being a first and third person FPS shooter, with Fallout 3 being released in 2008. This is when Fallout would go mainstream and become one of the most popular games in the world. Fallout 3 takes place in the capital wasteland of Washington, D.C. Players take control of the lone wanderer who is forced to leave their vault and go into the wasteland in order to look for their father who had just left to get the milk. You are able to find huge and alive settlements, as well as really explore all that Fallout 3 has to offer. The Enclave would yet again be the main antagonist, and the Brotherhood of Steel would be the ally. Fallout 3 was an incredible Fallout experience and still had an emphasis on player exploration and choices. However, with new consoles and better PCs available, the graphics and gameplay were far superior and advanced than its previous titles, as well as turn-based gameplay turning into a thing of the past. Combat was now in real time, but Bethesda would notice how the gameplay could at times be clunky and took a page out of the original Fallout's book, introducing VATS, which is a mechanic that would stop time and give the player the ability to aim and attack on an enemy's body part, with the accuracy of the attack depending on a multitude of factors. Fallout 3's advancement in gameplay and graphics, whilst also keeping the classic roleplay and decision-making mechanics, as well as a great story and environment, would lead to Fallout gaining massive popularity. Some of the old developers of the original Fallout game would go on to create Obsidian Entertainment, and after the success of Fallout 3, Bethesda would give them a contract and have them begin development on what would be known as Fallout New Vegas. Being released in 2010, Fallout New Vegas was very similar in terms of gameplay and mechanics to Fallout 3. However, the narrative-driven story as well as unique location taking place in the Mojave Desert would lead to Fallout New Vegas becoming a fan favorite and is now widely considered as one of the best Fallout games ever made. The player takes control of a courier who gets shot in the head and survives. The game features a multitude of old factions like the NCR, Great Khans, Caesar's Legion, and Brotherhood of Steel. The story and faction paths are always different, and there really isn't a set in stone good ending to the game, and this makes it infinitely replayable. Fallout New Vegas, in a lot of people's eyes, takes what Bethesda did in Fallout 3 and builds on it. However, one of the main complaints of the game is the glitches and crashing New Vegas suffers with. No matter what you are doing and how good your performance is, you are guaranteed at least a few crashes in each playthrough. This is probably due to the short development time Obsidian had, which led to a lot of these types of things happening. However, Fallout New Vegas is still a classic game and is deeply loved by fans today. After not receiving a Fallout game in half a decade, Fallout 4 would officially be released in 2015. Fallout 4 would be the next generation Fallout. With a new engine behind it as well as a better performing consoles, Fallout 4 would mark a huge and ambitious game with new graphics, mechanics, and gameplay features. The gameplay is widely regarded as hands down the best in the series, but at the same time, Fallout 4 is also criticized for its somewhat mediocre storyline. In Fallout 4, players take control of the sole survivor, who is a military veteran with a wife and kid that survives the day the nuclear bombs drop by running to the nearby Vault 111. However, the purpose of the vault was not to be safe from the bombs, but rather to cryogenically freeze its residents. After waking up, you then see your wife killed and baby kidnapped. You then start your journey to find your lost son. Fallout 4 didn't have as many choices and had a less complex storyline than past games due to the new addition of a voice cast on the main characters, making it so that you only had 4 choices in dialogue. However, whatever faction you joined or dialogue you said, the story seemed to always play out the same way. The older titles would let you build a truly evil character and have real consequences on the wasteland, but in Fallout 4 they pushed you to be more of the good guy. Fallout 4 is a game that may not have the same amount of choices and freedom, but definitely have the best gameplay and improvements of any Fallout game. In 2018, Fallout 76 would be released, but instead of the single-player, narrative-driven game, Fallout 76 would instead be an online open wasteland adventure with friends. When people first heard this, they were extremely worried, but still excited to see what Bethesda had to offer. And boy, was it a disaster. Within weeks of release, Fallout 76 was labeled as the worst Fallout ever. The game didn't include any human NPCs at launch and was widely hated by the community for its boring gameplay at times, lack of story, and just the lack of care for what happens. However, years later in 2023, Fallout 76 is still looked at as somewhat of a failure, but not nearly as bad as it was on launch, and is now considered by many to be a good game through a multitude of updates which included adding human NPCs. Fallout 76 has somewhat revived its reputation in the gaming landscape and now sits as a fun and chaotic experience that also shows why Fallout probably shouldn't be multiplayer. Fallout is one of the greatest game franchises ever and has released so many classic games that fans will always be excited for the next one. The next Fallout is rumored for around 2026, which is kind of far away, but as we all know, time passes quickly when you're having fun. But guys, thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed. Let me know what your favorite Fallout game is down in the comment section. Check out my other channels in the description, and have a great day.
And love is love, and hate is hate. To die is an awesome adventure, and I can hardly wait. Earth is a prison.